her resume, let me just start by saying that, is something that I know Jane's going, oh, Loretta, please. But her resume is the stuff that young singers' dreams are made of. She's sung in every major opera house in the world, with every major conductor and director, and I'll leave it at that. Excuse my phone ringing. You here, though, for this class are going to get to experience something that her audiences and the people who own her recordings and listen regularly won't get to experience. Her knowledge is vast, her experience is great, and all of those things aside, you are going to get to witness someone with a fierce intellect who knows so much about, forget technique, style, periods of style. She has a wicked sense of humor, and she is one of the most generous colleagues I've ever worked with. So on behalf, look, lucky us, lucky me, lucky you, lucky students, lucky people who are able to attend the class. I just want to say, give a generous welcome from the Loyola Voice faculty. Help me to welcome Jane Eaglen this afternoon.
Woo! Thank you, Loretta. It's so lovely to see you. As many of you may know, as Loretta said, I've known her for a very long time, and I've known Greer even longer than Loretta, actually. And we met for the first time in Scottish Opera when he was singing his first Johannahan, which tells you it was a while ago. And I was singing Fiordiligi, of all things, which is not a role I was particularly known for singing, but had a good time doing it on one occasion. And while touring with Scottish Opera around the Highlands and the outer parts of Scotland, we certainly were able to get to know, the people in the cast of the opera at that time. So and then I soon after that met Loretta, and it's just a wonderful friendship and relationship. And I've really been so fortunate to work with both Greer and Loretta, and I'm thrilled to be here now and seeing all you, and that's exciting for me. I do love teaching. It was always something that I wanted to do. It wasn't sort of, oh, well, I guess when I don't sing so much, I'll probably teach. It was always part of my kind of plan. Just a little tiny bit of background that for some of you who maybe, why would you know, but I've had one voice teacher since I was 17 years old. And he was my voice teacher throughout my entire career, and he had something to teach me when I was learning Caro mio ben, as well as when I was singing Isolde for the 10th time or whatever. There was always something that I gained from him. And so partly because of that, I really wanted to pass on everything I learned from him, which was, I know for a fact, without him, I wouldn't be here today. There's no question. So that coupled with, I've been very lucky standing next to Luciano Pavarotti on the stage at the Met. You look down his throat and you go, oh, that's how you do that. So those kind of things are just great experiences that I've had along the way, which again, I want to, I've always wanted to pass on to people. And so I'm really excited to be here with you today, and I'm looking forward to this. So I'll hand over to whatever happens next. Wonderful. And also, just before I forget, I believe it was your birthday a few days ago.
It was.
Well, happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Really, just such a really wonderful job. That was really exciting. And you have a beautiful voice, and it's just perfect for this piece. I mean, it's, you know, as you know, everyone kind of knows this piece and everyone waits to hear all those 10 top Cs or whatever. Is it 10? I don't know. I didn't count them, but it's plenty. It's how many?
Yeah. I think it's 9.
Oh, 9. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's fine.
Well, I think the last one counts as at least 4, frankly. So, you know, you can count that. So really great job. I just want to say that for a start. It's really excellent. I think sometimes in the middle part of your voice, for me, it's a little touch too open. So what I love is the brightness of your sound that you carry all the way through your register. I think the consistency of tone is really excellent. But sometimes I was feeling in the middle part of voice when you're coming down to sort of particularly open vowels like destin and ma, I found that the brightness was great, but for me, they were a little touch wide. So they didn't quite have the same roundness that you have in the rest of the sound. Does that make sense?
It does, yes.
Is that something that you are aware of, or is it just me hearing it?
I'm just noticing this, like, yeah, so.
I mean, look, I'm being very picky. I'm being very picky here because it's great. But it's particularly the second half, I just felt that just sometimes when you come down, and the thing, and this is a sort of backhanded compliment, and I say this to my students, when you make a fantastically great sound, which you do, when you get to those top notes, it's really incredible. You have to keep making an incredible sound. You know, it's a sort of backhanded comment because the better you are, the better you have to keep being. So all I would say is that what's happening, what I'm hearing a little bit as being just a touch too open in those places, it's really good. But I think honestly, you could be even better with it if you just kind of gather the sound in a little bit. You know, that sort of gather feeling that you get sort of out here a little bit, and in that middle part of the voice particularly. Also, and again, this is really, I'm picking at hairs here, but in between the por ma, as you know, there are rests there. Mm-hmm. So I don't quite hear the rest as much as I'd like. However, I would take the sounds you have on those Cs anytime if by putting the rest in is going to change it too much. However, I think you can do it. And I think what it means is not thinking that those rests are rests as such, but they're just, my teacher used to say this all the time, they're notes that don't sound. So in your mind, you're still thinking that the breath is going through those notes, you just don't make a sound on them. And then I think it's, you know, he obviously put them there for a reason. And I think he put it there for the sort of, to phrase it and for his, you know, what he's trying to say at this point, and to actually makes it more exciting. So when we go through again those bits, we'll do a little bit of the first bit first. Just try to think about how you can get those rests happening without them kind of tightening you up or whatever. It's also in those rests about keeping on your support. It's the support shouldn't go when you come off that first note. Does that make sense?
It does. Yes.
Okay, good. Let's go back to a little bit at the beginning. Also, I'd love the little notes to be a little, that you absolutely sing the to really sort of feel that the phrasing maybe takes that little note with the next note rather than the note that it looks like it's with in the way it's notated. Can we just try the very beginning?
À mes amis, quel jour de fête, je vais marcher sous vos drapeaux. À mes amis, quel jour de fête, je vais marcher sous vos drapeaux.
Great, beautiful. Try it now with the same intensity, but with a little tiny bit more legato. Now, I know it isn't really legato, and it's certainly in the orchestra, it's staccato. But therefore, I think because of that, you can afford just a little bit more line. For example, I had fête, and they're a little kind of the same strength, whereas the fête, it's the te is obviously not as stressed as the fête. So if you can just think a little more in those lines, you've tons of time to show off that sort of excited sort of military kind of sound. Just try, just see if you like it.
À mes amis, quel jour de fête, je vais marcher sous vos drapeaux. À mes amis, quel jour de fête, je vais marcher sous vos drapeaux.
Right, did you like that?
I did.
Did it kind of, for me, just gives us a little bit more, it feels like you're completely in control. Not the other one doesn't. I'm not 100% sure that on the second phrase you're singing the E naturals. It sounds like it might be an E flat. You know that E natural there? Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's also partly because if you think of think of it going into the next note, I think that might make it easier. Again, I'm really picking at tiny little things here because I'd pay money to hear this. So there you go. But just try one more time. So from the beginning, one more time with that same amount of line and legato, I thought it was lovely. Without losing, it doesn't lose any of the intensity that you're trying to give. So don't worry about that. But just think about those E naturals going into the F rather than being attached to the G before it. Just one more time.
À mes amis, quel jour de fête, je vais marcher sous vos drapeaux. À mes amis, quel jour de fête, je vais marcher sous vos drapeaux.
Good. So to my ears, the first one was right, and the second one was back to an E flat again. So okay. Just look at it. Just, don't just again. It's one of those things, and it's very quick. And I was kind of like questioning myself, and I think it wasn't quite in tune. And it might just have been that actually, with the excitement of it. Can we carry on? So this is l'amour. So part of the voice. This is the part of the voice to keep it, I think, nice and sort of tall. Do you think of your vowels in the middle part of the voice as being tall? I mean, here I am trying to sort of tell you my philosophy of singing in, 20 minutes or whatever. But I believe that as you go through the passaggio, the voice kind of narrows a little bit. So the vowels become a little slimmer. The column of breath that you have becomes a little slimmer. Then when you get to the very top, which you have a lot of these coming, the voice can then open out more because it has space to go there. If through the passaggio, and this I'll probably be saying to everyone because I say it to all my students, if you stay at the same width through the passaggio, you can't get into that top properly. properly. And what happens is the passaggio becomes a little spread. It's not as, it doesn't sound as beautiful as the rest of the voice. So the vowels have to be modified slightly. Is that something you've heard before, or is that new information?
I think I've heard something like that before.
Yeah, it might be just different wording, but so as you come through this bit, which is the sort of passaggio bit, these E flats and so on, which is a little in the low end of that, just think about keeping that round, tall space. And when you go down to the, I think there's like terre, not letting it get too wide, still bright, which I love, but just not too wide. Let's go from l'amour.
L'amour qui va tourner la tête, désormais me rend en Ah, quel bonheur! Oui, mes amis, je vais marcher sous vos drapeaux, je vais marcher sous vos drapeaux. Oui, celle pour qui je respire, à mes voeux, à daigner sourire, et ce doux espoir de bonheur trouble ma raison et mon cœur.
Okay, good. Let's stop before you get into one of the highlights there. Lovely. I thought the first part of that was really beautiful. It just kept it rounder. Because you don't have anything happening in the orchestra at that point, you can take your time. You know, always feel that in this kind of, you know, bel canto style, that you've always got time to take to do what you need to do musically and technically, honestly, as well. So that felt it had just a little bit more time taken over it, which I liked. Then when you get to Celle pour qui respire was lovely. Try and think of the respire almost like an U umlaut or une in French, so that it really keeps it round. So respire, there wasn't, again, nothing wrong with the sound, it was lovely. But that U vowel, I think, is just a really helpful way to think of E vowels pretty much throughout the range, actually, because it just keeps the roundness and the palate up and the tongue down without it getting too much of a sort of hard E distance. Can you just do from oui, celle pour qui?
Oui, celle pour qui je respire, à mes voeux, à daigner sourire.
Good. So lovely. Go a little further in respire. I'm not saying necessarily need to portamento, but also this is a point where you can really, again, take your time because there's nothing going on. So I'd love this to be a real contrast to what's been and what's to come. So just take your time, enjoy it. You know, it's a beautiful phrase. So just take your time to get to those upper notes and just kind of let the breath flow through the phrases a little bit more.
Oui, celle pour qui je respire, à mes voeux, à daigner sourire, et ce doux espoir de bonheur trouble ma raison et mon cœur.
Great. I'm sorry to take off the middle of that. Sorry about that. That was great. Yeah, much better. I think you can actually take the time on all of those. Even though it's not a high note, it's the highest note of that phrase. And I think just take your time to just round up the sound a little bit, which you can, you know, clearly do. So I would go there. Just make sure as well, I mean, again, tiny things, but to my ears, the manque, the A natural just could be a little sharper. Okay. I think just being really careful of these small intervals just really kind of solidifies, obviously, the harmony and everything, but I think vocally it does too. And I think if they're just ever so slightly, you're going a little too, not fast rhythmically, but fast in your mind. It's like, oh, I have to get through this. Whereas always in your mind, you have more time than you think to do things. And particularly, and another thing that I talk about all the time is preparation. So the more you start to think about preparing for something, sometimes if you have a high note, probably not with you because your high notes are just right fabulous. But for some of us, we have to think about high notes, about 5 pages before sometimes, just to sort of make sure, okay, am I in the right place? Am I getting there? So the preparation can make a difference. And I think there, if you really in your mind think you have more time, I think it's going to help what comes on. Now, I don't see how your top could be better, but at some point down the line, you might want to be thinking about those things. When you're young and your voice works, everything's great. The reason you need a technique and to figure it out now is for those times a little bit later on when, or even now, if you don't feel great, sometimes you don't feel good, but you still have to sing or whatever reason. And so that's what it helps for. So giving yourself more time at this point, I think ultimately will help you in the long run. Can you just do for me just before, maybe from Aimez-vous, or how about Et ces doux espoirs? Just from there.
Et ce doux espoir de bonheur trouble ma raison, et mon cœur.
Great. That was great. Yeah. Now, I know that was a different, you've been giving it a little bit more sort of energy on the mocha. I think you can still do that. Just take your time in your mind to make sure that you're really in tune there. Okay, let's go to Pour mon âme. So when you get to the bars with the rests, it really just, there's several ways of thinking of it. So think of it maybe as just like a note that just doesn't sound. Make sure you stay on your support and just keep thinking through the line so that you kind of see that your breath is going, but you just stop the sound. And let's just see what happens.
Just on the C's?
But let's go from Pour mon âme so you can sort of lead into it a little bit.
What page is it on? I'm so sorry.
Is that what you mean?
It's page 104 on mine.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Pour mon âme, quel destin! Je s'enflamme et je s'amène.
Great. So when you get to so just relax your jaw a little bit so that it can really flow through the breath. Again, nothing wrong with the sound, but it just feels a little held here, and I think you don't need to do that. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So just, I think this section, just think of it as a little more, again, a little more legato. It's not going to come out that way. I don't want you to think I'm turning you into Romeo or something at this point. It's not that. But I think it can have that sort of, just a sort of elegant legato-esque line to it so that it doesn't become something it's not. But also, I think the music's written in a way that gives that. You don't need to exaggerate that. So one more time.
Pour mon âme, quel destin! Je s'enflamme et je s'amène.
Yeah, that was lovely. That was lovely. That's the one that for me could be a little, sama, it's a little bit too open for me. So just ma, I think it's a hair on the wide side. So just stay, the brightness is great, but let's carry on for now. Yeah, I just want to get into the C's. How about we go from je fais seulement, and then if you want to sing that phrase, or just get straight into the Pour mon âme, into the C's, whatever's easiest for you. Probably just coming in on the C's.
I can just go into the C's, yeah.
I thought you could. Okay.
Pour mon âme, quel destin! Je s'enflamme, je s'amène.
Good. Great. So how did that feel?
It felt fine.
Do you like it?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Okay, so because I asked that because I'm like, okay, was it your choice not to sort of do the rest as they're written, or is it maybe just something that's sort of developed along those ways? But that was great, and it didn't affect the sound at all. It was lovely. For me, pour mon I don't think you need to do as much N.
Okay.
Or ma, ma. I mean, there needs to be a little N, but not as much. Ma, na. It's like a gentle middle of the tongue going to the roof of the mouth rather than a real n. So I think you can, I mean, obviously in this, we need to hear some of the words, but the words are not the most important part of this bit of the aria. You know, it's Caesar, so don't, you know, we don't do anything that gets in the way, basically. So I think you can just do less on them, but again, it didn't make a difference. Make sure that when you come down from the C, the A after it is absolutely in the middle. The second one was, the first one wasn't quite there. And, you know, again, as I say, telling my philosophy of singing, my belief is that as you come down in pitch, the breath should lift over. So it sort of keeps everything in balance. So rather than letting the breath drop with the pitch of the note, the placement of it, not how you breathe, but just the placement of the breath should go a little higher. So that I try and demonstrate. But so if you're going to go, ah, the breath is supposed to, ah, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but everything then kind of drops. And so what this does is it keeps everything in balance. It's healthier for the whole vocal mechanism, honestly. And it also does a lot of the phrasing for you in lots of, like Mozart, kind of, if you do this higher, lower, lower, higher thing, that's kind of all you have to do. So what it means is that higher the note, the lower the support, so that the stretch is there. And then the lower the note, the higher the placement of the breath. So everything is just in balance. Now, it's kind of like rubbing your stomach and patting your head. So to start with, it just gets a little like, I don't know what I'm doing. But basically on that, from that C, if you can think of not letting your breath drop as you come to the A, but more placing it a little bit more in the same place that you had for your C, because up here, I think that's where your resonance is. And I think it wants to stay there for the A a little bit more. Does that sort of make sense?
I think so.
It's a weird concept to get your head around to start with, I promise you. But I also promise you that when you figure it out, it really works. It really does. It helps your breath control because you're not losing breath every time you drop the breath and so on. You're not having to maneuver around so much. But it's just complicated to get your head around to start with. Then one day you go, oh, I get that. So just try it. So as you come from the C to the A, just try not to let the breath drop. Pull one arm again.
Or quel destin, je
Good. Did that feel different?
It did.
It was great. The first one particularly was absolutely spot on. It was absolutely in the middle of the note. It was lovely. So just think about that. And I do think that, you know, having the rest there is great. Let's just go to the second time it comes. I just want to finish it for you, and we have to move on, but I just want to finish it. So do the same thing here. And when you come down that third, just think of lifting the breath over. That was wonderful. Carry on.
Oh, sorry. so sorry.
No.
Me voici militaire mari, me voici militaire mari.
Yada, 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 yada.
Yeah. And then you just.
I'm sorry, what?
Sorry, carry on.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry.
Militaire.
Great. I mean, when I listened to it the first time, I was like, well, it's on the edge of being maybe a fraction too long on the C for a sort of musical. But then the other part of me went, but it's great, who cares? I mean, this is about showing off those top notes, so I sort of don't really care. What I would love is, and I do believe you can do this, so while you're holding that C, kind of feel that your placement here, just feel that you have a little bit of space over the top of it as you hold it. So I don't need to crescendo it, I don't need to diminuendo it, but I need to feel that it kind of blooms a little. Do you understand what I mean? So while you're holding it, you sort of feel like this part of your head turns a little bit to give that extra space, to give the note a bloom as you're holding it. So it's not about crescendo, it's just about developing a little bit, expanding a little bit on the space. Just try.
Okay.
Okay, I could feel that sort of developing a little bit. How did it feel?
Oh, good.
It was great. I mean, look, it's a little thing, but you have such a great top that I think to sort of, when you're up there doing those held notes, you just feel that while you're doing it, you don't have to crescendo. That's not it. So I don't need to start putting more air through it, because it doesn't need that. It just needs to have a sort of like a sort of sigh almost over the top of it. Just the thought of air being there is really what it is, or developing, or blooming, or lots of ways of saying it. But it's just thinking about, and you just go there for a little bit before you come down. It's not something you should do for the whole length of the note. It's just sort of at the end to do it. Yeah. Anyway, it was really wonderful. I enjoyed that so much. Thank you so much. Well done.
Yay.
Great.
I think next we have Julia Toonberg, soprano. She's a graduate student, and she's going to do Elsa's Dream from Lohengrin by Wagner.
Tristan
Wonderful. Julia, speak to me so I can see you.
Hi, here I am.
Where are you? You've gone again.
I'm right here. Hopefully it'll pop up soon.
There you go. There you are.
Yeah, okay, good.
I can see you in the big lift, but I couldn't see you close up. Well done. Beautiful
Yeah.
job. Really lovely.
Thank you.
You have a lovely voice, and the range is great. It's very even again throughout the range, and the low stuff, which is so important in this repertoire, is lovely too, as well as the top. Really beautiful. What I sort of think about this aria is that it's all sort of because she's recounting her dream, and I think she sort of gets into that place where she's kind of living it a little bit.
Mhm.
And I think this aria should all feel that it's kind of just sitting in this slightly ethereal sort of place, so that everything needs to be slightly, I kind of think this about singing anyway, that basically these are your notes, the breath is always on top. So the breath always sits on top. And that's nothing that you weren't out of tune. It was none of that sort of thing. And it's not to do with that. It's just to do with the kind of placement and where the harmonics go. And I think for a piece like this, it's lower in tessitura, but it reminds me how non mi dia has to be for Donna Anna in I don't know if you ever sung that. But that's the same thing. I did lots of Donna Annas. And basically, if I found the right place on the first note, it's like, okay, just stay here for the next 8 minutes, and then you can go off and have a beer or whatever. But it's like keeping it in that spot, I think, is very important. So I think where you start, the start of this is, wouldn't you agree, probably the hardest part of it?
Yes, definitely.
It's a very, very hard start, coming in, right in that sort of E flat, which is not an easy place. So you think of taking your breath on the shape of the vowel that you're about to sing. Is that something that you are aware of doing?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I think it's that plus in your mind, you're already in that spot, and you were, and this is, some would say harder, some it's easier. Of course, there's no consonant, so you have to come in hopefully without much glottal, because glottals are not really helpful to singing, and honestly, the Germans don't do them as much as we think they do. We're taught by diction coaches often you've got to have glottals here. And one of the last times I sang in Germany, the conductor was like, so why do all English singers sing glottals all the time? Because we're told to. He's like, okay, why? No need. So there, we got that from a German conductor. So I think if you can start this with really thinking that as you take in the breath, it's sort of like a circular thing. You take it in, and then you start to sing, like you can breathe at 6:30 and you sing at 12, maybe, is one way of looking at it. So
Okay.
I don't know if that's the right note, but it's sort of, it feels like it's rather than coming out this way, it's something that's come from within. So that sort of helping to lift your palate or imploding that glottal, thinking of it as that way, might help the start. And then when you get there, stay in that place. So even when you come down, just like I was saying to Tony earlier, don't let the breath drop with the pitch of the nose. So the is actually going to have a higher placement. Just try the very beginning for me.
All right.
Lovely. The start was lovely there. I still think you've got this great, you've got a face like mine, you've got nice big cheeks here. It's wonderful. It helps singing. It's absolutely wonderful. So try and use them a little bit. So even you go down there, this stays. So the breath can kind of stay in this place. And you really almost did that. I think you can just exaggerate it a little bit more, particularly because it's a start. You know what I mean? When you, at the start of an aria, if you're doing it for an audition, it's very important how you set it up. So if you can set up this first phrase and really keep it all in this part of your head, I think it'll make the rest of it easier too. Just try one more time.
All right.
Okay, good, good. Slate is a little brighter vowel as well, which can help. Good. I thought that the whole of that phrase was much better. I thought it was in a better place. Still, honestly, I have to practice that first note like a million times, basically. It's very good. Like I said with Tony, I mean, you sound wonderful. I'm not, it's small things. But that time it slightly came from underneath. Which again is, and not as much as that. Please don't think it was that. It wasn't, but so you really feel you're really coming over the top to that note. Don't do it again, but just to sort of think about it. And I know you have thought about it. I know this isn't new information to you. You know, it's like, oh, that beginning's hard. You know, it is. And it's one of those things that if you think about it too much can sort of make it worse in a funny sort of way, but at the same time, you have to just keep practicing it yourself. I remember, I don't want to tell stories, Loretta knows I tell a story once in a while, but I remember the first time I did the Verdi Requiem, and I just had learned it, and I saw that there was a pianist B flat in the last section with the chorus. And in the performance, I got to just before it, and it looked like 2,000 people suddenly all moved their chairs forward. And I thought, well, that's really weird. I wonder what that's about. And then I sang the pianist maybe flat, and they all went, oh, well, we'll go back in our seats again. And at that point, I went, oh, that's difficult. Because I just looked at it as a B flat and thought, okay, that's that. I never did it as well again ever in my entire life, I don't think. So I don't want, it's not that. It's not like, oh my gosh, it's so difficult. It's just that you have to keep sort of working and finding ways to make it work for you. And that might not necessarily be the best way, but just make sure that you're really approaching it in a sort of round, which you had for the rest of the phrase. It was lovely. But just that first note, like absolutely hear it and feel it before you start.
Okay.
But that was lovely, much better. Let's carry on. So let's, carrying on from after the first phrase.
All right.
Des Herzens.
Des Herzens stehst, des Herzens stehst des Klagen, ergoss ich ihm Gebet. Da drang aus meinem Sternen ein Gott zu Klage vor, den zu gewonnen Terror, es in die Leere schwur.
Good, lovely, lovely. So I'm doing this to, encourage you to do that. And when you did it, all of a sudden, the sort of sparkle came really forward. Not that you don't have that anyway, but it just, for me, it just put it into that extra sort of slightly forward place. And I don't know if this sort of, some people say, okay, it's like you smile. It's not really that, because that's a sort of external thing. It's more of just feeling space up here and just feeling that that's where your resonance goes to. And in this middle part of your voice, almost sort of feeling it resonates on your hard palate, sort of on your teeth a little bit, to feel that there. And as soon as you kind of lifted that there, I felt that come in there. It was lovely. Okay. So when you get to the high notes, and there's a so klage vor, and there's a the word. So I think at this point, and we're still in the passaggio here, really keep it narrow and tall, and lots of support. Now we keep talking about support, and I can't see you full length and so on. So just tell me, so if I say to you on that note, I think you need to have more support, what would you physically do to enable more support?
I would drop lower in my lower abdomen, give myself a little bit more space to make sure I have enough air at the end of that phrase to support all of those notes.
So when you say drop, do you mean you release the lower abdomen? Okay. So we all have different ways, and support is one of the things that I think is key to singing, which everyone I think believes is. There are lots of different ways of talking about it. And to me, I think what I would do actually is the opposite of what you just said. So that doesn't mean to say that you're wrong and I'm right, but this is how I feel it works, because the diaphragm needs to be firm, but the diaphragm also needs to move, because you have to breathe and it has to sort of give and take. But to have a firmness to it, and particularly for this repertoire, you've got to have a strong, support. So what I think it is actually pulling in the very low oblique, so below your belly button. If you kind of feel that this is the front and this is your spine, they kind of go in and up. So you kind of engage those muscles. Then what happens is the diaphragm sits on top of those muscles, but can still move. But there's an incredible firmness below it. Whereas to me, if it sort of releases, then you don't have that stability to the breath. Now, as I say, we're talking for 25 minutes on Zoom, and it's very difficult to do that. But just maybe think about that. So as you're getting to, these passaggio notes, particularly, just try. I quote Regine Crespin because, why not quote somebody wonderful? That when she was giving a masterclass once, she said, yes, it has to be there, where you are woman. So that's where your support comes from, without getting too personal about it. Just try and see. So when you get to the in the loft, and keep them nice and narrow. So really an R shape, like dolce in Italian.
Yeah.
Palates up, the tongues down, and then just try that little tuck and see what happens.
Okay.
Can we go from? Do you want to go from Dadrang? It's easy to get into it, I think, from there. With the E flats, yeah.
From Der zu Gewalden.
What when you go from Dadrang, that's mine. I don't have my.
Oh, okay.
I think that's easier. I can give you an E flat, I think. Dadrang, that's mine. Is it there?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
Dadrang aus meinem Sternen ein Lotz gefallen, der zu gewonnen Terrain, wird in die Welt schwul.
Good. Did you do a little tucking? How did that feel?
A little bit. I think I probably didn't tuck it maybe as low as I should have, but I was thinking about it a lot, and I felt
good.
A little more stability with it. Yeah.
Yeah, good. No, that was great. I think that on is it Welt or Weit?
Right.
I think you're trying to sing Weit. And why wouldn't you? Because it's on the page. However, on a G flat, we don't need to go there. So just think a little bit more of a vo, like an ah. Just, I promise you, if you sing the right placement for the voice, so if you sing on an ah in this passaggio place and even a little above, you sing an ah, but you think an I. Don't ask me why, it's like magic. It really works. Okay. So rather than the other way around, just try that. So just sing an ah, and I bet you it's going to sound like the right word, but it's actually, and the reason it's going to sound like that is because it's actually going to be a bit more gathered. So the sound is going to be better, because let's face it, we're all singers. So basically what we want to do is to make the best sound that we can make all the time. There are occasions when that's not the case. If you sing Lady Macbeth or something, there are times when you don't want to do that. But most of the time we want to make great sounds. So we have to modify vowels. There's just no other way around it. But when you get there, you can do it enough so that the sound is great, but we understand the word enough. Just go slightly before that. How about Der zu gewalten Turnen? Is that good? Somewhere around there, yeah.
Der zu gewalten Turnen wird in die
Good, that was great. How did that feel?
It felt easy. It was nice.
Easy's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it totally sounded like Vite. Now, I think that for me, that was like 75% going to that off place. So you can go further with it, but just kind of work on that and just see how far you can go. But it's always a case where you've done something, you think, oh, I'm really doing something different, which you are, but you can go a little further. Being a singer, you have to be brave. Not brave to go for it in the wrong way, but brave to do the right things. And that's hard because you can do it the way that you've been doing it for a long time, and it can be good. It can just be better if you're brave enough to, okay, I have to do this and this, and it's not going to work every time, but eventually it will. That was great. The other thing I would say about these high notes is just take your time. So there's no rush. And I believe the art of Wagner singing, and actually kind of anything singing, is the Bel Canto Method, which is basically the art of the slow approach, so that you have your shape, you put your air into that shape, and then you let that air go. So it's not creeping in, the shape is very firm and the breath is firm, but you don't have to punch it. So the beginning of a note, it never has to be the maximum. And in fact, and again, I quote my teacher all the time, you have to forgive me, but you know, he taught me so much. And he used to say, you can have the biggest voice in the universe, but if your maximum is at the same time as 120 people in the orchestra, doesn't matter, you're still not going to be heard. So this art of the slow approach, which just allows the voice to bloom as you get through a note, really helps, you know, with the style anyway. But I think rather than after, just kind of gentle with the consonant and just kind of flow through that phrase a little bit more, rather than feeling you have to do it absolutely on the beat. You know, we're all taught, we're students like, you have to be on the beat, you have to be absolutely on the beat. You won't be late. It will just give the phrase a more expansive feel, which is right for this kind of music. Can you basically do it just one more time, then we'll move on?
Sure, yeah.
Same place?
Same place?
To Gewalten, yeah. Good, better. For me, still the lot was a little sudden, just
Okay.
just kind of be lazy with it. You know, that's again contrary to what we're told all the time, but it works in this music. Yeah, lovely. Let's carry on. So ich hört, yes.
Ich hört die
Lovely, lovely. You have lovely legato. I must say that, you know, getting from note to note is lovely. And you use your consonants very well to do that. They don't get in the way. They're not stopping the sound, which is lovely. Do you have an edition that says like an extra note?
When I originally coached it, I had a coach tell me that it might be pretty to do that, and I kind of just decided I liked it.
Okay, because I know that there is an edition that actually almost has another note written in, I think.
Okay.
Which I don't like. And I don't know. I think legato is good. I'm not sure that I love the portamento there.
Okay.
So, but that doesn't mean to say it's wrong. You know, like if you love it, then you should do it. I just wasn't quite convinced by it. That's all. So you just have to do a little touch more conviction if you absolutely believe that. I'm all for, you know, it's not my taste necessarily, but if you believe it, and then you should do it. Just, you know, convince me a little more.
Okay.
That was great. As I say, the legato was really great, and coming down that lower phrase was beautiful. Let's, again, running out of time a little bit. Can we go to Mit züchtigem Gehören, page 206, if you know what that is? It's from the E flat to the A flat. Yeah.
Aha. Okay. Mit züchtigem Gehören, so tröst du bereit, des Ritters Willen, soll mein Streiter sein, soll mein Streiter sein.
Good, lovely. So all these little notes, which you do the rhythm really well. Again, just think that they're carrying on to the next note. Mit züchtigem Gewand. And they absolutely are really well in time, and they are little notes, but lots of people said this, there are no little notes in Wagner. There are no little notes in anything, really. So just make sure that you're really singing through them, and that they're not stressed, that they have the same amount of intensity, really, I think is the word.
Okay.
And again, go to an R, and then instead of Eisole, just sing R. Just
okay.
Dolce. Just see what happens. Can you do it one more time for Mit Süchtigem?
Sure. Mit süchtigem Geboren, so sollst du Jahr bereit, des Ritters Willen, soll mein Streiter sein.
Good. I still think it was air. So
Okay.
just really for an exercise, just say, I'll give you an F in a minute if I can just get it up here. It's really just that. I still think you're singing an air. So just sing.
Okay.
Sing Uzol, just for an exercise.
Okay.
Okay, so that to me that's what that air needs to be.
Okay.
As far as I can tell, that wasn't even like an exercise, that was exactly what it is. Because now what's happening is you're thinking of a narrow vowel, and I didn't expect you to sing, ooh, it's too high to do that anyway. But
Yeah.
what it did do was narrow the vowel down. It was lovely. That was exactly the place to go on. So I promise you that sounds like the right word. Now, it might take a bit for you to believe me, like, yeah, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Which is fine, we've just met. There's no reason why you should trust me. But I promise you that sounds good. So that was great. Then the same thing on this. We need to keep it sort of round, particularly this end when it's getting slower, and it's just we want as warm and round a sound as possible. So think again more O in that E flat. Can you just do from the F1 and do both of those? As all my stride, as I. Lovely. Yeah. How did that feel?
It felt easy. Yeah, it was. I felt more connected.
Yeah, good. That's the thing, through that passaggio, and I honestly believe every singer, the passaggio is the hardest part to figure out. It kind of wants to go into the top, but you don't want it to get weighty and dark down there, but it also has to connect. So by narrowing the vowels and finding whatever vowel that is, and as we've just discovered, we all interpret vowels differently. So when I say you sing an oo, you do exactly what it needs to be in that place. So we have to figure out how it is that we interpret vowels anyway. And so you did exactly that. It was great. Let's go on. I just want to get to the end a little bit because we're running out of time. Can we just go to the end? So I think you can do this in one breath. Do you?
I think I can too. It might take some practice, but I can.
Oh, exactly. So again, part of it is lining it up and just thinking that none of it. So what is it? I've never sung this aria actually, which is strange. So if you just keep it all in this spot here, and then just lowering the jaw, tucking low down, and then you're being economical with your air. So I think you'll find that you have more, and if you have to breathe, you breathe. And as you say, it's practice, but I'm sure that you can. If you just keep it in a narrow place that's spinning all the time, which is the support that does that. So just try it from Vil Air.
All right.
That was good. That was good. Now, for me, I think the Heisen was a little too sudden again.
Yeah, I agree.
H. Like implode the H. high, and you've tons of time there. You know, there's always going to be a little bit of a pause. It's going to wait for you. Mig high, rather mig high. It's suddenly it's just too sudden, I think. And I think you can be brave and take more time there.
Okay.
One more time.
Sure.
Good, lovely, much better there, much better. Just don't be afraid to take time. I think that, you know, applies to all young singers and whatever it is you're singing. You know, if it's bel canto music, take time before that cadenza. You know, when you have these long expansive phrases in this, or Strauss as well, take your time. You've tons of time. Just one little thing. So at the end, where you have the chord with a pause over it, and then lento in your part, I think the vas needs to come in really on the second beat, almost of the old tempo, because I think he's written it that way. You know, I gave him what I am, everything I am. So the impetus of that was ich bin, then you can take your time. Okay. So I think come in a little suddener so that we really realize it's offbeat, and he's done that for a reason. Wagner does this all the time, and it's for the dramatic reason of and then you kind of breathe me, and that's what it is. Just, can you better do the last phrase one more time?
Sure. From the same spot or after the high note?
Yeah. Beautiful, lovely. You have a lovely voice. That was really good. Just work on that, just taking time. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy that beautiful sound. Have fun with it. It was great.
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you so much.
Next up is Jeremiah.
Da quel tiranno tutti uccisi voi foste, e insiem con voi la madre sventurata. Ah, fra gli artigli di quel tigre io lasciai la madre Signori, se mi sfogge
Wonderful. Congratulations. Wow, this is fun. Yeah, this is really fun. It's some really great singing here. It's lovely. I love your passion as well. You know, I just really feel that I get what you're trying to say. It's great. I've lost you again. Speak to me. There you go. There you go. Yeah, speak. Somebody, there you go. Now you come up. If I like to see you in the big picture. Yeah, lovely, really lovely. And great colors, and again, you know, just a lovely consistency through your range, which is what I'm hearing all day today. It's wonderful. Also, I just want to say how lovely I thought your tongue was. Your tongue was so nice and flat. I could see it, and that was just wonderful. It's such a hard thing to. People talk about the tongue in different ways, and this yours was in a great way. People often talk about tongue tension, which for a long time I didn't really understand what I think people meant by that. And I think it is when it pulls back, because what I think the tongue should actually be firm. And what I could see on yours was that the front of the tongue was very flat, which I think it should be, because it's almost like it becomes a hard palate at the bottom as part of the resonators and keeps the shape firm. You know, I've already talked a lot about a firm shape, and that I think is key. And that is the tongue in the right place. If the tongue is kind of soft and comes up in the middle, then it gets in the way of the breath and everything. So and that's not to say the others who've sung haven't had a great tongue. I could just see yours at the end on the high B double flat, I think it is, and it was like, oh yay, that was really great. So just wanted to mention that. Good. So what I would love to hear a little bit more is a little bit touch more roundness in the middle voice.
Okay.
So I think that the drama of what you're saying is very much coming through and very key. I don't think you'll lose that. And I don't know if that's why you're doing it, but just sometimes in the middle, I could do just a little bit more roundness of the sound. So in other words, there's a little bit more space inside, and just letting the breath not pull back by any means, and I don't mean that you're pushing either, it's not that, but just sometimes I think the breath could just be given a little bit more freedom based on your support to kind of do its thing. So sometimes we have to like prepare the breath and the shape and everything, then let the breath do its thing, as opposed to making it do its thing. So it's all semantic.
Make it do anything anymore.
Well, that's good. But you know what I mean by that?
Absolutely. I'm trying to allow, because in the past I've been a vocal control freak, and so I'm trying to let go. I'm really trying to let go. So,
well, you know, singers have to be control freaks up to a point. So you have to be in control and to control the voice and make it do what it wants to do. But I kind of think of it that, you know, you prepare it all up to here, and then when the voice gets to this point and does this, it's gone, it's over, it's doing its thing. You've given it its home, and then it can go out and do whatever it needs to do. But sometimes what singers do, and I think at times in the middle you're doing this, is you're trying to control it once it's got to this point. Obviously you can't, but it's a mental thing. You know, that's the thing about singing. It's all about mental imagery to some extent. So just at times I felt in the middle that you were kind of hanging on to it and sending it out there instead of, it's gone, let it go do its thing. Okay. So I think it's just about keeping the support, but sort of keeping the freedom of the breath a little bit more, just really in the middle voice. When you get into the top, it goes into that, you know, really beautiful place, and the middle is beautiful too. I just think a little more freedom to that would actually help you. Let's just try the beginning. So let's just go from the beginning, from the recit. So one thing also that would help here is, again, we talked about a little bit earlier, this U, or fili. So just keeping that U place. It's not to get darker. It's not a darker vowel. It's just a more gathered vowel. So or fili. It just keeps the palate up and keeps it all rounder. So think about that and see if that helps at the beginning.
Figli miei, da quel tiranno tutti uccisi voi foste.
Great, lovely. That was, I like that color there. Did you feel a difference?
Absolutely. It always is like, oh my God, I have to start. It's like right in my passaggio, but I'm just trying to just do it and just let go.
Yeah, I mean, it is a hard start, absolutely. But again, think about where you're starting before you take the breath. Do you breathe on the shape of that vowel?
That's what I'm thinking.
So it's also thinking about the pitch. Oh, fili. And maybe maybe do a little sort of softer F, or feely. It sounds a little like you're slightly gripping it. So therefore it makes the breath slightly gripped. Oh, feely, of what you're saying as well. So I don't want you to lose the drama behind it, but maybe approach it with a little more, particularly because you say it twice. Oh, feely me, when it's easier because you just sung once and also it's a little lower. Just try it one more time.
Oh, figli, oh, figli, oh, figli miei, da quel tiranno tutti uccisi voi foste.
Okay, lovely. I thought that was lovely. Just support it, that's all. So I'm not going to pick around on this recipe, but da quel tiranno tutti. So what's happening is the tiranno is getting a little held, and that's not the stress part of it anyway. But there's also a rest there. And honestly, as you know, in these kind of recits, he put a rest there because he had to make 4 beats in a bar, and it was not necessarily relevant. But if you think of it, di quel tiranno tutti, and just kind of use that rest to keep going on. I don't think you should breathe there because the sense continues through. Absolutely. So yeah, so just sort of think about that a little bit more. Let's carry on. We'll just quickly go through the recipe, but just keeping that round place there in the middle, I think, is really helping. It's great.
Da quel tiranno tutti uccisi voi foste, e insieme con voi la madre sventurata.
Great. So the con has a little accent on it. Insieme con voi. So I would think of it more as like a line over it, but insieme con voi, with, just really kind of lean into it a little bit. Enjoy it.
Insieme con voi la madre sventurata.
Good. I'm being very picky here because it's lovely, but again, just try. I'm not crazy about the sventurata. I'm not crazy about that portamento there. Just because it's not stressed. Sventurata. Just kind of throw it
La
away.
madre sventurata.
That's okay.
I've always done that. Let me stop.
La madre sventurata.
Yeah, then don't make it a double T because you're not doing the portamento. Yeah, it's like bounce the ball. Rata. It's not important, that last one. I mean.
Madre sventurata.
Yeah. The other way to think about these last syllables on this unstressed Italian, unstressed anything, I mean, French is the most, but Italian too. If you think of it as putting the second syllable in the same place as the first, so venturata rather than rata, so that you kind of do a whole movement, which, although it's the same vowel, it comes out as being slightly different. Whereas if you just do a tiny T and just keep it in the same place, I think it helps. But just think about it. You don't need to do that again now. Let's carry on. So this is ah.
Fra gli artigli di quel tigre, io lasciai la madre figli.
Lovely. The feely was beautiful there. I really felt that was round. I mean, it was a beautiful place there. Did you feel that?
I was trying to do that, yes.
It was lovely. It really was. So as you go down this, io lasciai, feel that's a little brighter. So if you were listening early, as you go down in pitch, the breath lifts a little higher. Then lasciai. Then basically the reason for doing this, so that when you go on a lower note, your breath is placed in the place it will need to be for the high note. Now your high note is great, but I think there'd be more connection if you were not to let the breath drop on the low note. Does that make sense? So you go, la, sha. So you keep this, and again, you've got these wonderful cheeks. Love that. Singer's eggs, my teacher used to call them. Singer's eggs right in there. Nice thing to think about. So if you keep that there, and then when you la, sha, when you go to the A flat, you relax the jaw to give the space at the back, but this stays the same. Just try the Io lasciai from the D.
One more time. Io lascia, okay. Io lascia la madre
Lovely, lovely. I think you could take more time. Io lasciai la, like really keep it there and keep it slim. And you don't need to hang around too much, because I do believe that ultimately you can do this in one breath.
Yes.
You know, I think the finer you keep that line and the more you keep spinning. What's happening a little bit for me at the moment is lasciai la. You're kind of like making your breath go there. It's a fabulous sound, but I think if you prepare it on the lower note, you'll find you still get there, but you won't be using as much air, because at the moment the air, because it's coming from beneath, is kind of having to push it up there. Does that make sense? Just try it one more time and just keep it very fine and take your time.
Sorry, okay, I'm gonna.
No, I know you can, but you're so close. Listen, I'm asking a lot of you. You know, it's not easy to sing in this circumstance. I'm asking you to do something very different, and that was really great. Yeah, and the more you find on that, it's like so small. You almost don't use any air there, and you know you'll find that place. You know, you find that place where it's like it's spinning, which is what you need because it's going to carry then. But you're not really using a lot of air. So, you know, it's difficult. It's a difficult phrase and you sing it beautifully. But I just think if you think about not letting it drop as you go to the low note before the A flat, you'll find that all much easier. Yeah, great. Let's go into the aria.
Non vi foscoro cari, dai per felici cari, che morte vi ferir.
Great, lovely. So again, the tops are wonderful, and it's all wonderful. But just in places like for non vi foscador cari, it's not that it's weighty, but I just think if you keep your support, it's going to stay in the same sort of place, but the color will just be a little more, just the breath is freer.
Okay.
Can you just do the second phrase? No.
Non vi foscoro cari, dai per felici cari, che morte vi ferir.
Very good. That was great. And I thought after the A flat, you really did lift your breath as you came down. It was great. Keeps it all in balance. It's wonderful. Okay, great. Carry on.
Voi chi amavate invano.
Good, beautiful. So let's do less M on the me, and then feel that you again narrow it down. So it says, you know, dolce, okay, sweetly, that's fine. Double piano, you know, whatever. Any sort of dynamic, it's really about the color. So I just think there should be a different idea of a color there. So just make it small and forward with the focus. And just sort of feel, you know, piano singing is that loud singing, but more intense because you've got all this air and you're putting it into a smaller place. So just think about not taking the breath away or the sound away, but making it into a smaller place. So kind of more intense, which is really totally what it needs to be at this point for the character. Can we just go from aimer?
Voi chi amavate invano.
That was great. Did you feel that?
Yes, I'm trying to go against that little back.
Yeah. Well, that going back, so that can sometimes feel great to me, or when I'm doing that, particularly when I was a student, I'd be like, oh, I can do this really quiet stuff, and my teacher would be like, what the hell is that? It just sounds like rubbish. I was like, oh, but it's quiet and it's so pretty. He's like, no, it's horrible. And eventually I believed him, and so it's not that it's that, but I think it's coming off the voice is something that okay, it's piano, I need to do this piano, but it's also, I believe, with most composers, it's a way of just saying, we need a different color here. It's not about being piano. It's like we need something at this point. And they can put dolce, they can put, col canto or extra phrasing or whatever. But it's still for us to interpret what that meant. And I certainly don't think for 1 minute he went, he didn't suddenly want the character to back away from it. So I think what you did there was to give it that color which it needed. And also it's something you can play with, and gradually over time you might get a little smaller, but that's not important. Whether it's loud or soft is not important. Quality is important. And finding the right colors within that is what's important. So that was lovely. That was really fabulous. Okay, let's carry on. Good, lovely. Take your time again. Take your time at the end of the col ultimo respiro. Then on this ah, try starting with it a little brighter. So ah, and then gradually. So it takes practice, but gradually go into an o. So ah, and then you're in the right place for it's an F. Yeah, it's for the although it's trami, it needs to be, again, it's piano in the orchestra, a different color, I think. So take your time, and he gives you all the time. So you start to go towards the O before you leave the A flat. Just try it. Just play with it a little bit. Great. So it was lovely and it was beautiful. Now just try even more. Oh, think of maybe going to an oo. Like we did, just try. Good. How did that feel?
Oh no, yeah, that's I like that. It's like a choice. I like that.
Exactly. Well, this is also a way of doing crescendos and diminuendos is by just using the vowel. So in order to crescendo a note, if you just open the vowel, more air goes into that space, so it's louder, as opposed to I'll crescendo, so I'll push more air out. That never works because there's a point at which you have to stop. The same with diminuendo. If you start with a more open vowel and then you close the vowel, less air goes out, so it's going to be quieter, but it's something you have control over. So you do crescendo and diminuendos purely with vowel changes, I think. And that way you absolutely know what you're doing. You have control over it. There's never going to be a point I've run out of air. And so it's kind of the same thing, because you want to not exactly think of a diminuendo when you go to the F, but a little bit, so that and you can take even more time than that. Do it one more time and just take as long as you want to find that place for yourself. That was great. How did you feel about that?
Good. I like it.
I like that a lot. That was wonderful. Yeah. Great. Carry on. So this is from Posa.
Posa colui le braccia del tuo perdon aprir. Posa colui le braccia, posa colui le braccia del tuo perdon aprir. Si del tuo perdono. Aprir.
Lovely. Well done. Beautiful. So this is a B double flat, so it's an A, but it's the highest note of the piece. It's the highest note, and it feels like it's higher, right?
It's the highest A in my repertoire.
Exactly. It's almost like it's Mozart at that point. I always think Mozart feels like it's a third higher than it's actually written. And it's like, seriously, the highest thing I ever sang in my life was First Lady, seriously. So the same reason. So I think that when you have these sort of notes, it's the climax of the piece, and it's kind of in that place. It's not quite high enough to go there, but I think it needs to feel like it has a little bit of the over harmonics. So again, we were talking about a little earlier about going, so place it almost like it is a higher note, so that it keeps the same connection. I don't want it to get spread. It's not that. So it's not taking it wider. It's just taking it a little bit of space over the top. So even between the A flat and the A natural, the B double flat, really take your time to feel that it is going to go to a slightly different place, and just see what happens from the Paul.
Del tuo perdono, aprir.
Well, that A was fantastic. How did that feel?
Felt free, felt how I
Yeah.
wanted to feel.
Absolutely. So really think of that as being a higher placement. It's like those kind of notes in any voice that are sort of in the upper passaggio, you have choices. And sometimes if you're going to touch that and move down, it will be a different placement, because this is the climax of the piece. I think it needs to go into that higher place, you know, and that was great. For me, I would love the end to be I'd love it to be in one breath. But that's, again, your choice. I just think you've got tons of time and you've got actually tons of breath as well. Just do Del tuo perdono and just try it in one breath.
Del tuo perdono, aprir.
Yeah, it's better. I really think it is. I think it has more soul, honestly.
This is a choice that I've been like separating it, because I used to just do it all in one breath. I'm playing around, so I think maybe I'm going to return to the original.
Yeah, I like that. I really do, and I think you have so much. You've got so much to say with your singing. I mean, it's very emotional, and you communicate that so well. And for me, if you break it, it just sounds like I'm breaking it because of the end of the aria, and this is what I do. You know
what I do.
you know what I mean by that. It's like it happens sometimes at the ends of pieces. This is what happens because of the end of the aria, and I'd like you to applaud. Thank you very much. Now, I don't think that's what you're saying, but that's sometimes what happens, and we've all seen performances like that when somebody is just like, and you may applaud. Thank you. So I think it's in better keeping with the sense of the aria, honestly, 0-1, but it's lovely. And that B double flat at the end was fabulous that time. It was great. Well done. Really enjoyed that. Thank you so much.
So much. I appreciate you.
You're so cute.
Thanks, Jeremiah.
Okay.
We have next Juliana, and she's doing first act Turandot aria, Signore Ascolta.
Beautiful. Juliana, where are you?
Hi.
There you go. There you are. Well done. Beautiful, beautiful job. Such a beautiful aria. You have such a beautiful, spinny, shimmery voice that's perfect for this. As you may know, I've done many, many Turandots, and I always like, gosh, Liu gets the best music and she dies and everyone loves her. It's like Calaf and Turandot kill themselves. Not that they're not difficult arias for Liu, of course they are, but Calaf and Turandot kill themselves all night and then no one cares and everyone loves Liu because she dies. Although I would just like to point out something that people forget. I believe that Liu is the crazy one in this story because she says, he smiled at me once and now I must follow him everywhere. So she's the crazy stalker woman, I think, in Turandot. It's, you know, Turandot is perfectly sane. Anyway, that's just a little personal anecdote there. Really beautiful, lovely. I think you can take it, sorry, that's my app. I think you can take more time over the top sometimes. Particularly in this music, which, you know, you can kind of stretch it, and Puccini still should have structure and it shouldn't be excessively in any of those places, but there's still time, I think, to like when you're just taking time to sort of enjoy those phrases. Have you ever tried at the beginning? I know the phrasing is Signora ascolta. There's a phrase there, but it's often done, and a lot of conductors ask for you to go through. So Signora ascolta, Signore. So it kind of emphasizes the words a little bit. Have you ever tried that way?
No, but I can.
Well, there you go. Just try it. So don't rush it, but just Signora ascolta. So you kind of lean into that. It's the same vowel, obviously, but lean into that a little bit, and then you break it. Not every time, but a lot of times, because I've heard this many times, and a lot of times that is what a conductor will ask for. And then just when you get to that, take your time, like just really enjoy those places. So take your time. Let's just try the beginning again. Very good. That was lovely. I love the first phrase like that, actually. I think it really gives it a nice sort of elegant start to it. It's lovely. Great. So I'm picking at hairs here because, again, it's beautiful what you're doing. For me, I don't love the portamento on Regge because it has a double G, is why. So it kind of has to stop there. Now, portamenti are very much a sort of matter of taste, I think, and my taste is less is more. So typically in Puccini, I'd rather have less of them in really appropriate moments than just more of them. And as you know, you have to sort of think about them just as much as you would coloratura in Handel or anything. It can't just sort of happen. So Liu non regge più, because of the double G, that one kind of doesn't work for me, but play with it, see how you feel. Then see questo there, I think there should be a little one, absolutely. But I love the extra time over the top there. Did you feel good about that?
Yeah, and I mean that's my preferred way of doing it, but I was singing with a track and it's just
I know.
really hard.
No, I know, and I sort of wondered if that was the case, and I felt for you with that. I mean, I know how hard it is because it's their interpreter. Was it something you got on YouTube or App Accompanist or something?
Yeah, it was App Accompanist.
Yeah. I mean, it's their interpretation, and that makes it hard. I know on that it's okay because you can change the tempo, so sometimes it can be a little more helpful, but just absolutely take your time over the top there. What you did was beautiful, actually. Let's go for one more time from Liu non regge più, and carry on after the end. Lovely, lovely. You have a lovely sound in the low as well. It's beautifully and rich, and it's lovely. Be careful on the I had quanto cammino. I had a little kick there, I think, as you came off just a bit, but I didn't hear it afterward. Just be careful that often because of the drama that we're trying to do, sometimes there's a little kick of air that comes at the end. So just make sure you stay on your support and don't let that happen there. But it didn't happen later on. Making sure that all these sort of middle voices stay in the same place. Just sometimes your jaw is kind of pushing down again for the last syllable. It's very, it's natural in a sense. Anima, that's what we have to say. But if you can keep it in the same place, you're going to be keeping the resonance there, but also keeping your breath in the right place for what's to come. Just do from a call to I'm wrong note. Yeah.
Yeah, that was way easier.
Yes. I mean, articulation, we think, oh, we have to move our jaw a lot to articulate, but actually we don't hear as easily when that's the case. So by anima, the ear hears that everything is in the same place, and then the text is clearer too. And that's something that sometimes, diction coaches, one of the best, they have the best of intentions, but it doesn't always work as well. Sometimes you have to be a little clearer, but there we want the line and we want it all in the same spot. That was lovely. Okay, so that was great. Let's carry on from where we got to. So Marcel Tourdes, and again here, just kind of feel again that there's only A flats, and I know you have much higher than that, but they should feel like they have a sort of special color, a sort of something that makes them bloom a little bit, or just feeling the air come over the top, just a touch.
Okay.
So from Ma. Lovely. So the space you had over the top, I thought was great there. What I had a little bit though was ever so slightly what I call sausagey. I come from England. We have strings of sausages and we love them. But what I'm hearing about is I'm exaggerating just as much as that. So just keep your support constant and just let the breath go through all the notes. I promise you it'll be clear. Everyone does it because it's like, I've got to make these notes clear. They will be. But it will be more legato. And it's not that the sound goes away, but it comes ever so slightly. What happens is you analyze it. Before you move, the sound take away slightly to then make the next note be clear. So just keep the same consistency of breath and the same tone throughout, and that won't happen. Just go from Marcel to one more time. Yeah, it feels better?
Yeah, I did it in one breath, so I feel like that's probably good.
Well, exactly. Well, because if you're sort of doing this with the breath all the time, it sort of comes and goes. So it's like, I don't know if you've ever played a string instrument, but I'm doing it all in one bow. It's like they're not separate, but they're all in one bow. So the air keeps moving at the same speed all the way through those notes, and then that doesn't happen. And you end up with more breath because you're being more economic with it. So that was great. So the same thing on this next phrase when it's slower, but the same notes basically. Whenever you have two notes on one syllable, just keep that consistency of breath through them, and then that keeps it legato. So this is Neumorem. Good. So that was lovely, beautiful. You did exactly the right things over the top there. It was lovely. Then because this is faster, it's not going to be quite the same because it needs to move through the phrases. Just one thing I would say at the end, there's was it? so zilio. Not as much as that, don't hate me. But basically what happened was you changed the place a little too much. And these last syllables, every vowel should relate to the one you just sung. So if you have then you have to, and you have, again, love these muscles in the face, they're so great. So it's just using them a little bit more to keep it in the same spot, not letting it drop. So the jaw shouldn't be tight, of course, but it doesn't need to move to make that O. Can you just do one more time the same thing? Yeah, much better. Just one tiny thing. Again, don't hurt me. It sounded like the Zelia instead of O. So it's a more close Zilio. So it still needs to be bright, but more of an O. It's kind of a lot of people do sort of think of those last syllables as open O's. They're not. And I mean, it sounds like, oh, how wonderful. But I basically learned my Italian with Riccardo Muti because I sang Norma with him and had 6 weeks rehearsing. And so I'd say, well, is that an opener or a closer? And he'd say, is Zilio. Okay, is that open or closed? It's Zilio. Don't ask me to open or close. I'm telling you how it is. That's how it is. And that's what he would say to me. I was like, okay, maestro, thank you. You know, so all this sort of, is it open or is it closed? It's the sound that matters. So it is a bright sound, but it's really an O and not an A. So if you think of them as being open O's, almost always they turn out really like A, I think. So just be careful that when those are O's, they really are O's. Great, let's carry on. So just let me talk about the end a little bit. So again, if you set yourself up on the low notes as your breath is in a really good place, and the top is not a problem for you, it's easy. It just will make it more even to get to the A flat. Then just try to do the R before the A flat and the B flat. Just do that and breathe. Ah, and then do say the words, but implode. So that the P helps to implode and helps to lift the palate. Then you don't do a big T. It's almost like a D, and it's almost like the tongue sort of goes towards the palate, but doesn't quite get there. It's just that everybody that kind of knows this aria knows that those are the words at the end. And I'm a big believer in no words. And, you know, to sing RC, that's great. But this is one of those places where you sort of have to have a hint of what the word is. So okay. Anyway, let's try. So let's go from E pedera. That was good. Again, don't worry too much about the words. You So when you're at the top, if you sing so nore and then jepu, if you sing the notes on the lower part, we don't notice you haven't really sung them at the top.
Okay.
Trust me.
Is it okay to do a portamento on that, Reggie?
Yes. 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 Okay. That was great. And you honestly can breathe before, after that. So you can breathe there as long as you make it part of the phrase. You know, you can kind of breathe any single where, anywhere, as long as it's not in the middle of a word, as long as you make it part of a phrase. And I say this to my students all the time. everybody gets at that point where they've never breathed in this place ever before, but something happens and you have to. If you mean it and do it in the way, it's like, oh, that was meant to happen. If you go, people go, oh, what happened there? So if you take a breath after that but take it like then we don't mind about the breath. Now, you didn't seem like you needed it, however, but you might find it easy to do that. And then, but the pietà was lovely. So pietà, and then when you get on that B flat, just keep staying in that place. I don't think it should crescendo. I don't think you should do anything except have life in it to move. So while you're holding it, just think about keeping the shape the same and adding to your support. So keep tucking a little bit more. One thing that I firmly believe on high notes is that you should squeeze your bottom. So I've never sung a high note that doesn't have a bit of squeezing of the bottom, and I've got a big bottom and I've got big high notes. So the two kind of work. So trust me, if you just squeeze a little sort of gentleness there, it helps to build up the strength around the lower part of your body and helps with your support there. And so that will keep it in that place that you need it. So all you need to think about while you're holding that note is adding your support and staying in the same place. So don't think about putting more air through it, just think about those things and see what happens. But it was lovely that time, it was beautiful. Do it one more time from Leon for the A flat. Good. That was good. How did that feel?
That felt a lot better. I kind of like second guessed because I was like, am I gonna do the breath? And then I was like, no. And then, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's something you can play with. You know, it's like just go. And that breath would be in the place that you need to be for the higher note, and that would, you know, make a difference too. But what you did there was beautiful. Just don't worry about doing too much T. It's like the tongue just slightly goes up, but doesn't really pietà. It doesn't really go and hit the roof of the mouth. Can you better do this one more time? And this time, just for fun, just take a breath after the and see what happens.
Can I do it right on that one?
Yes. That was great. How did that feel?
Good.
Yeah, it was nice. That's also longer than any Leo has ever held a B flat on there ever. So you don't need to hold it that long. It's like they don't pay you anymore, trust me. So, and I'm not saying that because it's not beautiful, it is. But you know, it doesn't need to go, because the music, as you know, carries on at that point, and so as it does in this piece. But that was lovely, and I like that breath. I think it's more dramatic. You know, it's like in the other aria that you breathe before the last note when she kills herself. I think it makes just sense of the drama, but it was beautiful. You have a lovely voice, and it's really great for this. I love the shimmer in your sound. It's so pretty. It's lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yay. What wonderful singing. My gosh, it's just really exciting to hear you all. It's wonderful. I mean, I know this is sort of time, but I can, you know, if you've any questions for 10 minutes, I can stay for 10 minutes for sure. Loretta,
That would be great. Anybody who's able to stay can. And Greer has the first question.
Oh yes. Well, I wish I had two questions, but this is you prospered greatly from studying with a single teacher. And nowadays it's really hard for young singers because they're so bombarded by going to all these different programs and being preyed upon. And I think, I mean, talk to about even the mindset of nowadays that you have to sort of take this patchwork like approach to singing, you know, taking this from there. And as far as lessons are concerned, I think that I've seen a lot of young singers get confused that way.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I was kind of unique. I don't know anyone else who's had a career, you know, as long as mine, that's had one teacher the whole time. It's unusual. But it was also that I just kind of, I knew right from the beginning with him that I trusted him completely. And that's not to say that other people don't trust their teacher, but it was a point of whenever anybody else said something to me that I kind of knew wasn't right, within me, I felt, oh yeah, that's rubbish. I'm not taking notice of that. And that's also, again, not to say that there weren't some coaches that I worked with that gave me some good information and so on. But when it came to my technique, and that was my teacher, and nobody else could touch my technique because I trusted him and felt that. And that, again, isn't to say that some people might not have had good things to say, but I didn't need anything else than I was getting from him. I do think it's very hard now, and you know, it always has been to some extent, because you work with good coaches and you can have a, you know, like I said to somebody earlier, you're working with me, but you've just met me, so you shouldn't, I believe, you shouldn't trust your voice to someone until they have earned that trust. You know, somebody has to earn the trust to take this precious thing you have, your voice, and tell you what to do with it. And I believe that singers have great instincts, and most singers know, well, it doesn't kind of feel right, and just because this person is famous and sings at the Met, I'm gonna not do it. But I've also seen, you know, in my career, lots of times I did a few master classes when I was younger, and it was very much like, well, this person's very famous, so I must do what they say. At the end of 6 weeks, those people can't sing anymore, you know, because they've been doing things that are not right. So I think trust your instincts and trust the people that have earned your trust. And that's coaches, teachers, anybody that you've worked with over a period of time. But I'm old. I'm very skeptical of always, well, I have to talk to my team about this, you know, just, I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, sort yourself out. You know, it's just like, get over yourself. You have to figure it out. And when it comes down to it, you are the one that's responsible for what you do. And although hopefully there are those people that you trust, but lots of people that will come into your career, they all have an axe to grind, an agent. Well, you'll only do what I tell you to do. They're making money from you. You know, they have an axe to grind. Hopefully a teacher should never have that. If they do, they shouldn't be teaching. But the point is that you have to be aware of all the information that you get and pick and choose. And there's always going to be something good from people that have had experience and whatever, but not all of it will be relevant to you. And it's perfectly okay to say, that's really great information, it doesn't actually apply to me. And I think, you know, the important thing is to trust yourselves, and that's huge. Does that answer your question, Greer?
Why, yes, it does. And I'm hoping to sing for you in the next masterclass.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know, I always tell my kids, well, it's gone. My thought is gone, but it was important what I always tell my kids.
Oh yeah.
Any questions? Any other questions, guys?
I have a question, or I guess trying to finagle into, hi, Professor Eaglen, I'm Emily. So you are a professor, clinician, performer, adjudicator, all these wonderful things. You have so much experience. I just wonder, is there anything that you've learned from your students over the years that you've brought into your own musical journey? And also, do you think your priorities as a teacher have changed as you've grown into the profession over the years as well?
Sure. Yeah, good questions. I mean, you know, I absolutely learn from my students all the time, and certain things that I've found I sort of tweak with my teaching. For example, one of the things that cropped up earlier was telling somebody to sing an oh vowel on a higher note. And I was working with a soprano once and it wasn't happening, it was still kind of too wide. And I was like, well, try an ooh. And she sang an oh. And so I was like, well, that's exactly what I want. But in my mind, that was not ever going to happen because it wasn't. But then I learned, okay, so we all have different ideas about what vowels are, and you have to sort of experiment a bit to find out what works for that particular student. And, you know, as I've taught for longer and become more experienced, I think it's very important. I try to teach every single singer completely on their own, what their voice is. It's not, I believe that breath and support are key to all voices, big or small, but a voice is a voice. And so I love teaching all voice types. You know, my teacher was a tenor, and he worked with a lot of great sopranos, and I think it made him a great teacher for sopranos, but he also taught other voices, you know, just as well. And I love working with tenors because it's kind of reverse of him. But I love all voice types too. And you know, people often say, well, do you just teach big voices? It's like, no, that's ridiculous, because it's a voice is a voice. So I try to sort of really aim towards whatever that particular student needs and what their voice, you know, is best for, and so on. And what was the second part of your question?
I mean, you answered both of them, just sort of things that you've learned to prioritize. But yeah, that's all.
Okay, good.
I have a
I see Jeremiah. I see your hand up.
Oh.
Or somebody else, or Michelle.
I think he was okay. I was wondering if you could clarify what you meant when you talked about lifting the breath for lower notes. I wasn't sure if you were talking about abdominally lowering the breath for higher notes and abdominally raising the breath for lower notes, or whether you were talking about more around the pitch and how you're thinking of it. So if you could just clarify that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, just the placement. So not how you breathe. So nothing to do with the abdominals, just how you think of the placement of your breath. So if as you go up, you narrow a little bit with the placement of your column, as you come down, and it's usually that people find it harder when they are doing sort of descending intervals. Usually, if you go ah, then the sound has dropped, the breath has dropped. Ah, if you literally think that the breath is coming over the top, and I've been doing this for so long now that in my mind that's a higher note, because that's where I'm placing it in my body. And so the breath then doesn't have to drop for low notes, and the consistency stays the same. And also you're not pulling the mechanism around. It's like if you sing modern music, for example, that often can have huge jumps. As does Mozart, you know, beginning of Come Scolio is nothing but. But if you approach it this way, it kind of narrows those jumps and just makes it healthier. And, you know, it's all about healthy singing. That's what technique is. So is that clearer?
Yes, thank you.
Good, you're welcome.
I wanted to ask, how do you stay grounded and find the fun and the enjoyment in everything that you've done? You've sung everywhere, you've been with all these things. And I feel like, you know, so often on our quest to be great, or our quest to, like, you know, do everything right, it can just not be fun. We just like can monitor ourselves like to death about it. How do you find the sparkle in everything that you do? How do you sustain that over a major international career? And, you know, how have you like worked to stay grounded in the middle of all of it?
I mean, it's hard to sort of think of any sort of how do I specifically deal with this or whatever. I mean, I come from a working class family in the north of England. You know, it was just like, nobody around knew what opera was. I started off as a pianist, and that's what I wanted to do until I was really in my teens, and found out I had a voice in my late teens, and then decided I'd go to music college to sing rather than play the piano. So my sort of upbringing, if you like, was very down to earth, and I don't think that's just sort of who I am, and that never sort of changed. I mean, I always also, one thing that for me is very important, that I think is important for people to think about, is this whole difference between you and your voice. So you and the commodity that is you. So when people would say to me, oh, I've seen you do so many performances, I know you so well. In my mind, I go, you don't know me at all. You know what it is I put up on stage, but you don't know me. And so that was important to me, that they're different things. And like in my business side, I could always be very decisive. I knew exactly what I should do, what I shouldn't do. Nobody was going to mess with me. I was going to be very clear about those things. In my personal side, personal life, it was like, oh, I don't know what I want on the menu. Do I want the fish or the chicken? I can't decide. And that was, you know, the two are just completely different, but that was just how I was. And so I was always able, and I think it's really important to think that way. Not that I wasn't passionate always about my singing, but by keeping sort of myself, which is as an artist, some of that of course came through, but still it's like my life is different. And also, I think it's very important not to feel defined by your instrument, by what it is you do. It's like, yes, that's what I do. That's not who I am. And that, having seen some singers, very famous singers at the ends of their career, sort of ready to retire or having retired, I think that wasn't the case. And I think it's very sad that a very famous singer, when they'd retired, said, well, I suppose I'm going to have to learn to drive now that I'm not blah, blah, blah anymore. And it's like, well, firstly, you've probably got enough money to pay someone to have you drive. But also, if you really have had this incredible career and you think that's all you are, that's a very sad thing, I think. So for me, it's always important to have other things in your life, you know, to have interests and on those kinds of things. And I like to have fun. I mean, one of the funnest shows I think I ever did was Lohengrin with Greer, when we got to make out and do all kinds of fun things. And I think Loretta and my husband sat together eating popcorn in the audience, saying, "Oh yes, look at that. They should go for that a bit more." So. But yeah, I mean, you just, you take it extremely seriously. But from my point of view, if you can also enjoy it and have a little bit of light-hearted fun along the way, then when you get to the really serious part of putting these performances on, I think they're better for it, honestly.
Yes, that from someone who has a wicked sense of humor, as you can tell, and also from someone who's stood out all night in line to get the first or second Harry Potter book. I remember you. Yeah. This woman has a life other than her music, that's for sure. Anybody have any other questions?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're
Jane,
so welcome.
Wonderful. I took copious notes. My kids don't know what's going to hit them in class next week because we're going to have long discussions. But genuinely, we so appreciate it. Can we all give Jane a hand?
Thank you.
Bravo! Bravo! Great job, singers. All of you did so well. It was really wonderful.